With all the snow and the ice that, as a lot of you know, you received in Northern Virginia and Washington, D.C., we pivoted Monday and we transitioned to today's virtual ceremony. And just thanks in advance to everyone for your flexibility. But hey, look, this morning, every one of you is a special guest, and we're glad that you're here. But let me just recognize a couple of people by name, and then we'll move through the agenda. But the first is Honorable Alan Estevez, who I think is with us here this morning. Obviously a leader in both defense and industry, and he's currently the Undersecretary of Commerce for Industry and Security for the United States of America. He's also a former Second Assistant Secretary of Defense for Sustainment, and he was one of our IDB Executive Fellows in 2018 and 2019. And we're also honored to be joined this morning, and I think we worked through it with her staff, Congressman Valerie Foushee from North Carolina's 4th District, who we should hear from here in a little bit. I'd like to welcome all the family and friends of our incoming Executive Fellows that are with us here this morning, and we're glad that you're here as well. We have several IDB board members, in addition to Mr. Bradshaw, who are with us, and we want to thank our board members for being here. And we also have several former Executive Fellows that have tuned in, and they're with us. They're obviously part of our Executive Fellow alumni, and we appreciate them being here. And then finally, a lot of current and retired uniformed and senior military civilians from across the services, the Joint Staff, U.S. Transportation Command, Defense Logistics Agency, and other organizations across the DoD enterprise. And we really appreciate you being here. Let me give you a little bit of background here on our Executive Fellows Program. But the IDB established the Executive Fellows Program to provide our participants the opportunity to benefit from the extraordinary experience, expertise, and credibility of recently retired senior leaders from the Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, the military services, and private industry. And since 2005, these highly qualified and knowledgeable individuals have contributed significantly by serving as guest lecturers for the full range of our IDB programs. They participate in panel discussions as well, and they often represent IDB at conferences. But our Executive Fellows provide thought leadership, ensuring that IDB programs remain current, vibrant, and relevant in the ever-changing logistics, sustainment, and business and geopolitical environments. And their qualifications are unmatched, and their impact always exceeds our expectations. And frankly, it's one of the attributes that sets the Institute for Defense and Business apart from other educational institutions. So this is the format. Clark showed it briefly up front, but this is the format we'll follow for this morning's ceremony. After I get done here in a second, you're going to hear from our IDB chairman, Mr. Bradshaw, and then Congresswoman Foushee will come on. And then we'll introduce our incoming Executive Fellows, but as they know, they're not going to introduce themselves. Rather, they've chosen someone else to introduce them and say a couple words about them, which is, yes, potentially dangerous, but nonetheless, it ought to be good. It's now my pleasure to introduce our IDB Board of Directors Chairman, Mr. Tom Bradshaw. Mr. Bradshaw has spent years of distinguished service in business and government leadership positions in North Carolina, including being the Secretary of the Department of Transportation and the Mayor of the City of Raleigh. We're fortunate to have his leadership leading our Institute for Defense and Business Board. And thank you, Mr. Bradshaw, for being here, sir, and over to you for your comments.
Well, thank you, General. As always, let me say that this has always been, for the past 28 years, the highlight of my year. And let me tell you why, if you will let me just this moment. I was a guy that was raised by military people because my mom and dad had split up, and she asked 2 of our neighbors who were coming home from the war would they help me because they had children the same age. So I immediately loved it, what this man was doing to me. He not only did that process, But when I was 17, I joined the North Carolina National Guard, and I have over 20 some years service in that. But the message I always ask about it, having been someone involved in North Carolina, we were blessed with all the military services, and I didn't see anything was being done. And so I actually approached the Republican governor, asking him what he thought, because he was an educator from the university, what he thought about us having something at our business schools and doing things for military folks, and just highlighting how important all the bases are in North Carolina and what it meant to me. But actually, he helped me in that regard, put it together. Actually, when we recuperated this thing, he put this thing on my birthday, and I've been at every one of these meetings, and it's to highlight for the following reasons. And I'm sorry we're not doing it today, where you're all in the meeting and the people who are stepping out are being graduated. The new ones are being recognized, and then there's a host of other people. Now that we're going to the Army Navy Club, who would come to see you get worn out, and everybody said, "What are you doing? What's bragging about it? Why is he going to do this?" It was an unbelievable program, and I know we'll get back to doing that. But the weatherman has messed us up one other time on this. But the message I would say to you is, having been raised that way, I always ask the question, why have we not done something? And I'm very proud that we've done this, and I think we've been recognized by the educational people, because North Carolina, when I was growing up, was tobacco, textiles, and furniture. That is not what goes on in North Carolina now. We are actually one of the places where, and California knows we're in that business, because we created Research Triangle. We have all these things that are high tech. IBM came to us in '65. Everybody else has come. Apple is there with us. What made it pieces. And all I'm saying is, your part of this program was important to me, because we were not doing for the military the way I thought we should recognize the people who've done so much for us and what we do. And I think even they feel better about the people in North Carolina doing it, because we've done the work for them on their highways and their businesses. But more than anything else, I think I just want to say I will look forward to the opportunity to see each and every one of you, to thank those of you who are moving on, and the new ones to welcome you, because I've seen what it's done, and how many folks were telling us North Carolina is all about education. That's why all of our universities have moved up to the point, if you looked at us and asked someone naturally, they say North Carolina now is the education center in competition with the Californias, the way they were in the past. So let me just stop right there and say I look forward to doing it. I'm pleased that you accepted the opportunity. I congratulate those of you who are graduating and finishing up. But this is a great day. We're not going to let the weather mess us up. And I will look forward to hearing about each and every one of them. And you folks always enjoy that. And it's always another 25 or 30 people who come to watch you guys go together about this. So it's a thing to look forward to in the future. So thank you again, General, for letting me say these words. But it's my pride, I promise you. I've been lucky in a lot of business. I've been a banker, mortgage banker, and I've done a lot of things, made a lot of money. But nothing is as important as this is to me.
Thank you, Mr. Bradshaw. Really appreciate that. All right. Well, thank you, sir. I really, really appreciate it. And thanks for your continued leadership. Okay, it's now my pleasure to introduce Congressman Valerie Foushee, who represents North Carolina's 4th District, where IDB is located here in Chapel Hill. But the fact that the Congresswoman took time this morning to spend some time with us at this ceremony really demonstrates her commitment to our mission. Congress played a pivotal role, Mr. Bradshaw referenced it, pivotal role for IDB over the years. In fact, it was Congress that passed legislation and provided funding to drive substantial change and improvements in the DoD logistics system. And this legislation led to the creation of IDB. And initially in partnership with the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, IDB won the initial contract for what evolved into our flagship log tech program, which obviously Honorable Lohman and Mr. Morani know a lot about, as well as Mrs. Smith, who's with us. But Congressman Foushee has been engaged in our programs as well. So in addition to the advocacy she provides us in the Hill, she has actually served as a kind of a lecturer and a presenter at one of our programs, which with her busy schedule is just incredible. And it speaks to her commitment to this mission. So with that, ma'am, thanks for being with us. And over to you for your comments, Congresswoman Foushee.
Well, thank you and good morning. It is indeed a pleasure to be with you today. I am Congresswoman Valerie Foushee, the federal representative for North Carolina's 4th Congressional District. And on behalf of the North Carolina Congressional Delegation, please allow me to extend a warm welcome to the annual Institute for Defense and Business Executive Fellows induction ceremony. Before I begin, I would like to thank IDB's President, Lieutenant General Mark Faulkner, Board Chairman, Mr. Tom Bradshaw, and others for their steadfast leadership and for inviting me to speak at this esteemed event that showcases the incoming IDB Executive Fellows who teach, mentor, and interact with many of the IDB course participants throughout the year, providing their invaluable insights, experiences, and leadership into the Institute's programs. Over the last couple of years, I have really gotten to know and understand IDB's incredible mission. In fact, I personally had the opportunity, as you just heard, to participate in an IDB program and see firsthand the power of an IDB offering. And this past summer, a member of my staff spoke to participants in the IDB's industry-based broadening seminar on the information environment. It is great to stay connected to IDB's important work, and I look forward to continue working with you all and this world-class educational institution that is located in my district in North Carolina. For those of you who have attended this event last year, you may already be familiar with the IDB's proud history, but I would like to share with you briefly how IDB came to be, as you heard some of this a little earlier, and how it continues to lead in the executive education space. You could say that the IDB brought Capitol Hill to Chapel Hill with their executive programs for our military, the Department of Defense, entities of the US government, and the private sector. As many of you know, over 2 decades ago, Congress passed legislation and provided funding to effect substantial improvements in the DoD's logistics system, with strong bipartisan support from the North Carolina congressional delegation. Following an intense competition with 16 other universities, the IDB teamed with UNC at Chapel Hill and won the initial contract for what became its signature educational program, LogTech, the Center of Excellence in Logistics and Technology. Since then, IDB's programs have expanded from their logistic roots to include stabilization and economic reconstruction, national security strategy, and more, and have graduated over 10,000 motivated professionals ready to innovate their organizations. Not only this, but the IDB's partnership and relationships have expanded to encompass many universities and private industries. After Congress provided the initial funding for LogTech, the Department of Defense picked up the programming, first under the U.S. Army Materiel Command and now the Office of the Secretary of Defense. That department has assumed the role of being LogTech's proponent. With their support, LogTech programs have continued, and we in Congress are very pleased with that. In particular, I would like to recognize and thank the Honorable Christopher J. Lohman, the former Assistant Secretary of Defense for Sustainment, for his advocacy and support. We have worked with his office and his predecessors through the years in receiving annual funding for these critical IDB programs. I am thrilled to see you here as part of the 2025 class of IDB Executive Fellows. I am also very glad to see Mr. Stephen Marani here as well. Mr. Marani is the Acting Assistant Secretary of Defense for Sustainment. We thank you for your continued support of LogTech. I should also note that OSD's advocacy goes even further back to Mr. Alan Estevez, Mr. Estevez is the Undersecretary of Commerce for Industry and Security and has been an extraordinary advocate of IDB's mission to educate and assist the incredible men and women who serve our nation. Notably, 2024 marked an impressive milestone for the LogTech program, as the IDB joined forces with East Carolina University, which now serves as the academic accreditor for the offering. In addition to this, several ECU faculty members now teach portions of the impactful curriculum, further demonstrating the IDB's commitment to the state of North Carolina and our impressive academic institution. As formally voiced in bipartisan letters, the North Carolina congressional delegation is interested in obtaining multi-year programming to ensure long-term viability of this extremely important series of programs that will meet the ever-changing and complex sustainment challenges the Department of Defense will continue to face. After all, this investment has remained relevant and yielded repeated substantial dividends well beyond the program itself. IDB's educational initiatives promote best managerial practices, teach fiscal responsibility, and ensure that our service members have the equipment and training needed to safely carry out their evolving missions. Further, IDB has become the role model for strategic public-private partnerships and collaboration. The Institute brings together military and civilian leaders from the public sector with academic experts and entrepreneurial, corporate, and nonprofit community members to identify and solve challenging problems. I know every one of the distinguished audience members in this room or in this space has a great appreciation for the huge challenges the United States and the world have recently encountered, and especially in the areas of supply chain resiliency under adverse conditions like the pandemic and the stresses brought on by continuing active armed conflict. The IDB Executive Fellows, as Executive Fellows, you will meet here today are ideally suited to help the IDB execute their programs. They certainly possess a valuable strategic perspective, and they have operated in positions of great responsibility on the national and global scale. The hard lessons they have personally learned will bring depth and dimension to programs and help those now who are currently serving our country, both in public and private sectors. Thank you all for all of you who have supported the IDB and their programs. I am committed to working alongside the members of the North Carolina delegation, the Department of Defense, and our military to ensure IDB programs remain current and viable for years to come. To the Executive Fellows Class of 2024, I would like to thank you for giving back again to those in our military and industry that support our nation. And to the Executive Fellows Class of 2025, congratulations on this prestigious appointment, and thank you in advance for your commitment, for committing your invaluable time once again to serve our nation as IDB Executive Fellows. Thank you all for coming to today's ceremony and for supporting North Carolina, the IDB, and the Executive Fellows. I am excited to be your partner in Congress, and I look forward to continuing working together. Thank you all.
Well, ma'am, thank you. And really, again, appreciate you being here with us this morning. Your comments were tremendous. And thanks to you and your entire team for the continued partnership. And we couldn't do what we do without you. It's as simple as that. So thank you very much. Okay, what I'd like to do is, before we introduce this year's class, is just a special thank you, and the Congresswoman mentioned it, a special thank you to our outgoing fellows, and I'll just name them off here. General Ed Daly, United States Army, retired. Miss Patricia Young, member of the Senior Executive Service, U.S. Air Force. Four-star Admiral Carl Schultz, United States Coast Guard, retired. Rear Admiral Pete Stamatopoulos, United States Navy, retired. Mr. Logan Jones, who was our executive fellow for private industry for this year, who's the CEO of Sci-Fly Aviation. And last but certainly not least, Major General William Mullen, Marine Corps, retired. Major General Mullen tragically and unexpectedly passed away during the course of this year while he was out on the West Coast back with his family. He was a tremendous Marine and leader. I know him personally. He was a friend of mine. More importantly than being a great leader and mentor, he was a loving husband and father. We'll miss him dearly, and I respectfully ask all of you, if you would, just join me in a short moment of silence in honor of Major General Mullen and his family. Okay, well, thank you very much. And several of those outgoing fellows are for 2024 are with us today. So thank you all for being here as well. Okay, let's meet this year's incoming fellows. First out of the chute is this year's executive fellow from the United States Coast Guard, Vice Admiral Michael McAllister, United States Coast Guard, retired. And introducing Vice Admiral McAllister this morning is Vice Admiral Paul Thomas, United States Coast Guard, retired. Welcome, Paul, and over to you for the introduction. Okay, Admiral Thomas, can you hear us? Okay, hey Mike, let's do this. You're not forgotten. One more time, Paul, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, we got you. Paul, welcome, and over to you for Mike's introduction.
All right. Well, thank you. So good morning, everybody. It's really a distinct pleasure and privilege for me to be here this morning with this group of really distinguished past and future IDB fellows, faculty, staff, supporters. Many of you are online today. I've had an opportunity to work with, including Tom Miller, Michelle Skubik, Honorable Lohman. I think Admiral Carl Schultz is out there. And of course, my longtime friend and colleague, Vice Admiral Mike McAllister. I've had the opportunity to work for Mike, to work with Mike, and to serve alongside Mike as a member of the Coast Guard Senior Leadership Team. And I know him to be a great leader, a brilliant thinker, and a considerate mentor, an unsurpassed crisis manager. There's no doubt that Mike will bring unique experience and perspective to the IBD students, faculty, staff, and this cohort of fellows. And Mike will tell you that he's lucky to have made it to 03, let alone 09, and it's true. He had some interesting experiences as a junior officer, including leaping from the bow of a rapidly sinking vessel that he himself caused to sink, and then during that same patrol, barely extracting his boarding team on time from a burning vessel that they had in fact set ablaze. But he survived those adventures because of his bias for action and his ability to lead and motivate teams. Mike went on to have a very diverse career that included time at sea, operations ashore, service as a Coast Guard civil engineer, many special assignments, and of course, executive positions. As a junior officer, Mike spent 6 years at sea, commanding 2 of our patrol boats. He and his crews seized tens of thousands of pounds of illegal drugs and arrested dozens of smugglers. And they also participated in one of the Coast Guard's most challenging missions, saving the lives of hundreds of migrants who had taken to the sea. His shore operations experience includes some very remarkable and historic crisis responses, including serving as the initial incident commander and directing maritime evacuation of Manhattan after the attacks of 9/11. He also led the search and rescue efforts after an American Airlines flight crashed into Jamaica Bay, and directed operations after unexpected explosives were detected aboard a vessel that was in close proximity to a POTUS event that was ongoing. And as in 06, Mike commanded Coast Guard Sector Charleston, South Carolina, where he currently resides. And there he was responsible for all Coast Guard operations in South Carolina and most of Georgia. As a flag officer, his first tour included serving as a deputy J3 at Northcom, so he understands joint operations. And while at Northcom, he did a lot of DISCA work, including responses to Ebola, multiple hurricanes, wildfires, and other disasters. Following Northcom, Mike served as the commander of the Coast Guard's 17th Coast Guard District, which is headquartered in Juneau, Alaska. And he was responsible for all operations in Alaska, including the Arctic and the maritime border with Russia. Now, the 17th District is arguably the most challenging operational environment in the Coast Guard due to the weather and the sheer tyranny of distances involved, but it had other challenges as well. As Mike traveled throughout the region to engage with Native communities, he also experienced some unique customs, including eating whale blubber, so you can ask him about that. Mike also served as our Deputy Commandant for Mission Support, which can be best summed up as responsible to obtain, sustain, retire everything that floats, flies, has a roof, runway, pier, or heartbeat in the United States Coast Guard. It is the 1469 TRACOM of our service, and then throw in health, safety, wellness, and medical. Mike retired as the commander of the Coast Guard Pacific area, where he was instrumental in raising the engagement level of the Coast Guard as a key element of the joint force in the Indo-Pacific region, and he crafted the resourcing plan for the White House and the Hill to approve that is further enhancing Coast Guard operations in that region today. Since retirement, Mike has been active with the Charleston Council of the Navy League, supporting Navy, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard members on the waterfront through ship commissionings, morale events, and professional development. And he was instrumental in the designation of Charleston, South Carolina as an official Coast Guard community, reflecting the community's steadfast focus on supporting members of the Coast Guard and their families. Mike also currently serves on the Flag Advisory Council to the president of Arizona State University, which has been designated the most innovative university in this country for 10 years running. And coincidentally, both of Mike's sons are ASU grads. And Mike is actually currently active as a consultant on a wide range of national and homeland security issues. So I think you'll agree that with this diverse experience and impressive accomplishments, Mike will add a lot of value to the IDB team. So please help me welcome my good friend, Vice Admiral Mike McAllister, U.S. Coast Guard, retired.
Outstanding. Well, Admiral Thomas, thank you. That was outstanding, and I appreciate the introduction. And welcome, Vice Admiral McAllister. Mike, welcome to the IDB team. We are really glad to have you here, and thanks again. Okay, that was a great kickoff. Let's move to the Air Force. This year's executive fellow from the U.S. Air Force is General Mark Kelly, United States Air Force retired. Introducing General Kelly this morning is Lieutenant General Tom Miller, United States Air Force. Welcome, General Miller, and thanks for being here. And over to you for General Kelly's introduction.
Hey, thanks, General Faulkner. And I've benefited from LogTech and actually attended, as a colonel and got a lot out of it. So I'm excited for being able to participate today. Really honored to be able to introduce someone that I've respected, been a squadron commander with, interestingly, in North Carolina, in the same wing. Had the privilege of working for almost 30 years, General retired Grace Kelly. So General Kelly is a warrior, no doubt, and his decorations are too numerous to list, although 2 of them are Distinguished Flying Crosses with Valor. He's been a commander of a squadron, 3 wings, 2 numbered air forces, and the largest command in the United States Air Force Air Combat Command. Many of you know, his operational background. So over 6,000 hours, over 800 of them in combat. I thought it'd be interesting to the group here to hear some things not in his bio that might be increasingly relevant for IDB's mission. So he has a deep understanding of logistics and sustainment. And I think he takes that understanding of logistics and sustainment and meshes it with his operational background. And that makes him uniquely qualified to offer things to students they may not get from somewhere else. And I think it'll be a real benefit. So on the process side, he is incredibly intellectually curious. He will ask questions. There's the saying, if you want to be interested and not interesting, he is interested in many things, and he asks questions and draws people out in a way that I think has really benefited the Air Force. He put the 3 Air Force depots in his cross-check as a commander at multiple echelons and different commands he had, went to all 3, very important, and did immersions at all 3. The only senior leader I'm aware that's done that. That would be important enough. More importantly, I think, is he challenged his commanders to do the same thing. And we all know that when the boss says, hey, I'd like you to go look at this, you become fascinated with it. So he has an entire generation of operational leaders that are spending time leaning into sustainment and logistics. And the airmen on the flight line certainly benefits from that. On the resourcing side, he really pursued on the PowerPoint level of knowledge on how resourcing in sustainment and logistics works, to the point where he had us build a 100, 200, 300, and 400 level course to walk through the mechanics of how we resource sustainment and logistics in the Air Force, both on the contract logistics support side and the organic side. He went through and spent the time on that and had the entire air staff spend time on it. And then, common theme here, had it taught to all his wing commanders in ACC. So intellectually curious to understand for himself, equally motivated to push that knowledge to another echelon of leader, and that we'll all benefit from in the end. On the people aspect, something that really, I know there's a couple of other general officers here in the building that still talk about this. His point would be he wanted operationally minded maintainers and maintainer-minded operators. And he really drove that home. So you might ask, so why this recent curiosity and, that approach at the senior level? And I would offer to you, having known him for 29 years, it isn't recent. This is the way he's always been. Very quick story, I promise, Mark Faulkner. On the flight line, so I was a young captain and he was a slightly older or mature captain, let's say, as the weapons officer of a fighter squadron at Lakenheath in England. And I'm there on the flight line with the senior NCO who teaches captains, and that's what senior NCOs do. And I see a couple of airmen, running, and the senior NCO I'm standing next to goes, "Oh, they're newbies." And I go, "Well, pretty far away. How do you know they're new?" "Well, sir, you can walk in England and be wet, or run in England and be wet, but you will be wet." And I go, "Oh, okay." So I'm picking up on the new stuff. So a week or two later, I see a couple of airmen running again on the flight line, and I'm thinking I've got it all down. And I look, lean over to the senior NCO and I go, "Oh, they're newbies." And he goes, "No, sir, they're not new." And I go, "Well, why are they running?" And he said, "Well, Captain Kelly's aircraft has a radar problem, and they're working to fix it to launch him out." And I go, "Well, why are they running?" He said, he talks to them, he asks them how they're doing, he makes them feel like they're part of the mission. And so the lesson to Captain Tom Miller there was that it's amazing what people will do if they feel like they're part of the mission and they're with you. They're not just co-located with you. That's the executive fellow you're getting in General Retired Grace Kelly. Kim and I are honored to count he and his wife Tanya as friends of ours. They've shown us a model of service which we strive to achieve, and I'm really excited he's joining your team. So many thanks, and Mark Faulkner, back to you.
Yeah, General Miller, thanks. Tom, terrific comments. Really appreciate it. And General Kelly, we're excited to have you aboard. Welcome aboard, and welcome to the IDB team. Really appreciate you being here. Okay, I have the distinct honor of introducing this year's executive fellow from the Marine Corps, Lieutenant General Ron Bailey. Matter of fact, Ron's joining us today from St. Thomas. I think it's difficult to be down there in Paradise. I know, especially with all the weather in the nation's capital, Ron. But thank you, and I'm going to make a couple of comments about General Bailey, and I'm not sure General Bailey was actually exercising sound judgment when he asked me to introduce him, but nonetheless, I'm honored to do it. General Bailey and I have known each other for more than 40 years, right from the early 80s. And Ron's a little older than I am, and just like Tom said, General Miller said, Ron will tell you more mature, but a little older nonetheless. But originally from St. Augustine, Florida. He went to high school down there, played a little bit of football, played a lot of football, and was pretty good at it. And after graduating from high school, went to Austin Peay University in Tennessee and played football there. He was a student athlete at Austin Peay, a member of the ROTC program, and a varsity member of the football team, and graduated. I mean, he didn't take some powder puff courses. He graduated with a degree in biology in '77, and again, he went right into the Marine Corps as a second lieutenant infantry officer. And I'll talk a little bit about it as I get some highlights of his 40 plus. But suffice to say, incredibly successful. And as an infantry officer, he's commanded at every level. He's commanded at the platoon level, the company level, the battalion level, the regimental level, and also commanded 1st Marine Division out in one of very historic divisions of the Marine Corps, 1st African American Division, commander of 1st Marine Division on the West Coast. And along his career, obviously did all the right other things, right staff jobs, joint jobs, picked up a couple graduate's degrees along the way to include at National War College. We met each other at my first tour, and I think his second tour, in 1st Battalion 6th Marines in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, in 1983. It just so happened that I was an infantry officer at that time, and his brother, his younger brother, was one of my squad leaders. And so he's got Marine Corps in his family, and like I said, his brother was a Marine, and he's a Marine, so he's definitely in the top 2 of Marines that were in the Bailey family. And just a tremendous leader. But General Bailey and I, he's incredibly competitive. I'll talk more about him here in a second, but General Bailey and I ran our first Marine Corps marathon together. I think, Ron, you will remember that. And we had a great time. And I don't know if you remember, but as you finally came across the finish line, I gave you a high five, and it was a great race. But after graduating from, after Marine Corps retirement, he returned to his alma mater, Austin Peay, and became their vice president of external affairs. And what a great hire from the college in terms of Ron had his hands on everything for his alma mater, whether it was marketing, whether it was recruiting, whether it was internal affairs, or whatever the case may be, and just did a tremendous job there. Going back to our final tour together, was really in the Pentagon. He was the senior operations officer for the Marine Corps, plans, policies, and operations, and I was the senior logistician. And I had an opportunity, because we spent a lot of time together, to actually see him in action. And his depth of knowledge of logistics rivaled, if not exceeded, mine, and that was my career field. And so, much like General Miller, his appreciation for the importance of logistics, sustainment, maintenance, distribution, all those things in support of operations is just tremendous and incredible to watch. He is currently the Vice President of Industry Development for the National Electrical Contractors Association, or NECA, where he's responsible for creating things like training programs, expanding the scope of the workforce development, and creating partnerships with institutions. And I think that What Ron will tell you is the key to all these is relationships, and something he has been incredibly successful at throughout his career to date. Let me pivot here and talk a little bit about General Bailey, the person. He has 2 kids that he adores, and he's a terrific father. He's got the best mom in the world, still living in St. Augustine. But General Bailey, I've never met anyone that's more focused on doing the right thing. He's an amazing leader. As I said, values people, respects people. He's a talented teacher and mentor and coach. There's no question in my mind he's going to be a superb addition to this group of talented executive fellows for this year. He's always led by example in his professional and his personal life. He treats everyone with respect and dignity. And one of the great things I like about him is he doesn't have a lot of patience for folks that do not. And I'll let you figure out what that means. He's got an incredible work ethic, and it's an honor to call him friend. So finally, I mentioned Ron loves his mother, he loves his country, he loves his Marine Corps, and he's passionate about helping prepare today's and tomorrow's leaders to face and win against the challenges of the future. So with that, General Bailey, welcome aboard, my friend. We're glad to have you to the IDB team. Okay, this year, our executive fellow from private industry is Mr. Channing Irvin. Introducing Mr. Irvin is Colonel Omar Land, United States Marine Corps, retired. Omar, over to you, and thank you for being with us this morning.
Sir, thank you very much. I'll start with a few things. I'll let you know that this introduction is basically being given under duress because, as you can see on the other side of the room, Channing actually sits right here with me. So you won't be getting everything that you expected out of me, but I'll just make it as close as I can. I'm seeing that you actually have some people out there. Admiral Schultz, he was the J3 down at Southcom when I was one of his forward deployed commanders down in Honduras. General Ron Bailey, who I actually thought was going to be the first African-American commandant of the Marine Corps. One of my mentors from back in the day actually sent me to 8th and I and got me started on a great career. With those people like that in the room, gentlemen, I don't know how you scrubbed Channing Irvin's resume and decided to make him part of that esteemed group. I'm certain that it'll get there. Onto his career, like I said, we've known each other probably about like a little over 20 years within the Secret Service. Can't really get into a lot of that, what were we doing, because now we're starting to talk about national programs, counter surveillance, and protective intelligence and everything. But Channing rose up through the ranks through the Secret Service. He went to the presidential detail. I went to the vice presidential detail, which happened to be Cheney at the time. General Faulkner, you said, take shots at Channing. Let me tell you about the time that Channing took a shot at me. We were actually on the detail. There was some confluence between the two. And I was actually sitting in a car about to transport the vice president and the wife to the airport. Channing decided to come over. Asked me a couple of questions, a little simple interrogation. Hey, you good? Everything all right? The next thing you know, he tested the viability of my jawline. So after spitting a little bit of blood out, one guy said, I thought you Marines all love each other. He was like, no, I mean, we got to test and make sure we all stay hard and everything like that. So like I said, with that being said, sir, that's Channing taking a shot at me. But like I said, after that, he continued on through the Secret Service. He rose up through the ranks. He culminated with the SAC of the Protective Intelligence Division. Now, let me tell you how important this is right now. A lot of the things, this is just my opinion, but a lot of the things that are going on in the news that you're hearing about right now is the lack of, how would you say, the experience that would flow through that division. The whole thing about intelligence itself is we all know, some of us being intelligence professionals, we need to be left of bang, not right of bang. And the whole thing is we need to get things where we're preemptive and everything like that. And Channing actually spent time, he gave me a call down at CENTCOM when I was actually running the 3X for General McKenzie. He says, hey, You guys down there, you like target people. You can find people like in holes, like out in the middle of the desert and everything like that. Hey, how about this? Can we bring this together? So at one point, Shannon was actually trying to bring them back closer to DOD, back closer to the intelligence community, back to the heart of intelligence at itself. So with that being said, I think it's one of those things where the type of person that you're getting within Shannon Irvin, you know, we have two things that we used to say in JSOC. You have a bias for action and you have a bias for understanding. Shannon puts both of those together. And I think that's needed going forward within the world that we live in right now. We could talk about, you know, all the instruments of national power and the leveraging of all those things. Shannon understands that from the ground up level. Sticking to your time thing, sir, what I will say, sir, I'll give you like the last piece. I can't really rib him too much, like I said, because he's sitting right here and I am like kind of scared. But I'll tell you the story of a kid that started out at the Ohio State University. It was probably back in 89, I think it was 89 or 90. And, you know, he's there, he's doing his thing, wherever like that. And I think he sees a newsreel. And within that newsreel, it basically says, hey, the United States is possibly going to be going to war with Iraq. So at some point, Channing, and I think the Congresswoman spoke of service. This is a college kid that says, hey, I want to be part of that. Goes down to the recruiter from the story he tells me, goes down to the recruiter, and the recruiter say, hey, what MOS do you want? I'm whatever gets me to the front. I want to be in the fight. And so, like I said, with something like that, joining your ranks, gentlemen, yes, you most definitely did make the right decision. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Shannon Irvin.
That was terrific, Colonel Len. Omar, thank you for that introduction. And Channing, welcome aboard. We're really glad to have you here, and welcome to the IDB team. And you're going to be a tremendous addition to it, no doubt, in my mind. And thank you. And you probably lay off that jawline if you don't mind. So let's go to our next executive fellow, and this year's executive fellow from the United States Navy is Vice Admiral Michelle Skubic. Introducing Admiral Skubic this morning is Vice Admiral Kristen Acavella, United States Navy.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Rear Admiral. Awesome. Hey, I appreciate the promotion.
Did I promote you, Kristen? I'm sorry.
Like by two. I skipped a couple.
Well, you know what? I can see the future. So, and I have an inside with CNO. No, I'm just kidding. Well, welcome, Kristen. Thank you for being here with us, and thank you for agreeing to introduce Admiral Skubic. And over to you this morning. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. And you can see I'm under duress also, literally sitting right next to my friend and former boss. So I'm going to take her off camera here because I don't want you to see her roll her eyes.
I like it.
When I share some insights of some of the unknowns about this great leader. And just to start, so obviously I've been very blessed to work for some incredible folks over my career. Another one is the 2024 fellow Admiral Stamatopoulos. So, sir, I see you online. Congratulations. And then also a tie with Mr. Bradshaw on the line is I'm always looking to plug. I'm a proud graduate of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, so go Heels, and how this program ties to the great state of North Carolina.
Great.
I think that Admiral Skubic asked me to do this because I have the longevity award with her. We go back almost 30 years now when Lieutenant Junior Grade Aquavella showed up to ASD Sigonella to work for Lieutenant Skubic. And that's where this relationship started. And then I was blessed again when Admiral Skubic, Rear Admiral Skubic, asked Captain Select Aquavella to come out to the U.S. Pacific Fleet. So over the next couple of minutes, I'll hit some of the knowns, but I really want to hit some of the unknowns about this great leader and friend sitting next to me. So from her bio, you see 3 ships in her career, a Acadia, and then a guided missile destroyer on McFall. And then as an 05, she went out to be the first Supply Corps officer as the USS George H.W. Bush was being built. And some things from that you may not know, that it is incumbent on the Supply Corps officer and the supply department when you commission a new aircraft carrier to actually design the crest of the ship that will last in history, and certainly during the 50 years that ship is supposed to operate. So my friend sitting next to me can be credited with the crest of the USS George H.W. Bush, and its motto, "Freedom at Work," was part of her genius with her team, and that'll be in the history books forever. Also probably not known is she did do an IA to Kuwait when she was a brand new captain, which is a little bit unusual for us being a seagoing nation, and it's appropriate that we've got this painting behind us for our maritime force. But she did spend some time boots on ground supporting the joint force out of Kuwait. And then in her bio, really as a flag officer, I'll just highlight, she was the commander of NAVSUP, also the 48th Chief of the Supply Corps, and then culminated her career at the rank of Vice Admiral, and just a year ago retired as the 20th Director of Defense Logistics Agency. Her first flag tour at PAC Fleet, U.S. Pacific Fleet as the N4, this is part of the unknown. So this was 2014 to 2016, and the U.S. Pacific Fleet was starting to see a change in the operational environment and the threat, with the pacing threat today of China. And under her leadership and with her lead planner for logistics, started to craft and coin what we know today in the Maritime Force as mobile logistics, and was the first one to bring to then Admiral Harris, the U.S. Pacific Fleet commander, this idea that we had to start to reposture the theater based on some thought well ahead of her time that we were going to have contested environment and contested logistics. And so that work that they started back literally 10, 15 years ago, we're now seeing that manifest itself in posture in the Pacific Fleet. Some of the unknown things and fun facts about Admiral Skubic, and she does have a taser, and if you see me just kind of jump, she's probably pinching me under the table. But so not known what a stellar athlete she is, and I got to be the #1 Sherpa as she did her first and only triathlon in Virginia Beach many years ago. And what was incredible about that is she was already in the swim, and they called the swim because of how rough the water was. So the other waves behind her really only got to do a biathlon, not a triathlon that day. And she was unaware that they were trying to call everyone back to the beach because it was literally unsafe for her to finish the swim. So she finished the swim, she finished the bike, and she finished the run. She took that awesome experience and turned that into a Face of America Wounded Warrior bike ride. We do that every year from the Pentagon to Gettysburg, 100-mile trek with Wounded Warriors. And what was impressive, besides the 100 miles that she rode, was that she's the only one in the ride who rode herself into a ditch, flipped over on her handlebars, brushed it off, got her bike out of the ditch, and then finished the ride, ending in Gettysburg. As these fellows that are all in the class of 2025, if you end up at the bar, I'll just say anything with tequila is her preference. And also impressive, I've known this leader for 30 years, and I can probably count on my 5 fingers how many times I've heard a curse word come out of her mouth, which is pretty incredible given the level of demand in your jobs and your all the time I've spent with her in the car, just one-on-one. And then I'll leave you with one fun fact, and definitely something the fellows can ask her about in person, is that when she retired a year ago, she got a personal video from the actor John Stamos, and I think many of you remember him. And in the video, he talked about their connection and, when they met many years ago when she was running a bar and managing a bar out of California. And so I just offer you a little tidbit that how and why she knows John Stamos is well worth a question to her. So to Admiral Skubic, congratulations on your induction.
You're cut
and
off.
I'm cut off.
Well, That's, Kristen, that's tremendous. And you'll obviously pay for several of those, but it does arm us for this coming year, which we're very appreciative of. And thank you for joining us this morning. Really do appreciate it. I know that, you got a busy schedule as well. And Admiral Skubic, welcome. Michelle, glad you're here, and welcome to the IDB team. We're honored to have you. Okay, certainly last but not least is our executive fellow from the Office of Secretary of Defense and the U.S. Army. And I'm sure that our introducer this morning, Mr. Steve Marani, will do that. But welcome, the Honorable Chris Lohman. Really appreciate you joining our team this year. And with that, over to you, SES, Mr. Steve Marani.
Well, thank you, Mark. So wonderful introduction. So I'll have to say, for Admiral Skubic not to swear as Spy Corps officer, that's probably the most astounding feat. So congratulations to you. So I had the screen on wide, at the beginning, and that was for Honorable Lohman's benefit. I want to make sure you saw that I didn't change the room at all. I actually couldn't bring myself to come into this room and operate out of it. Since you've gone, I will tell you my medication has been adjusted and my depression is almost gone since you left. So, but we're doing okay. So, I do have the pleasure in introducing my friend and my former boss this year. And it dawned on me, Mark, as to why you selected him. And I think Congresswoman Foshi's comments brought it out. He has been an advocate for this program. He's also a master at resourcing. So I think entering into this new year, you knew exactly what you were doing when you picked him. I will give a little story. So when he came into the job, we were woefully under-resourced as an ASDS. We went through this period of they called it night court, right? And we lost personnel and we lost money. And our budget was a measly $15 million. So this year is being restored to a level of $75 million, which is an incredible increase. Don't get excited. I don't think any of it's for you, Mark, but we will have some money to do some good work for the sustainment enterprise. I think most of you know Chris Lohman, and if you've been in our business of defense logistics for any time at all, he really needs no introduction. You probably took a look at his bio multiple times. I say, for those who don't know him, you're either in a coma or you're out of the country or you just were off the net. But what he has accomplished in the short time he was here leading the sustainment enterprise, I would say probably hasn't been done in over 10 years. He really aligned OSD to the National Defense Strategy, the priorities, our defense planning guidance, and then he linked how to resource and advocate for the resources for the service to get after those capabilities that we need in logistics. So masterful at putting together a strategy to ensure that we're going after the most important areas in logistics and sustainment. As was mentioned earlier, we are in a contested environment against a peer threat, and really it's a global threat. So the work he done was incredibly important. He has many accolades. He's a two-time recipient of the Presidential Rank Award. And as a Senate confirmed, prior to taking this job, he was performing the duties of the assistant or the undersecretary of the Army. Not an easy feat to walk into that job, but well suited to take on that responsibility. If you know, he's a lifelong logistician, and I mean literally his entire adult life, and I'll talk to that. So to be able to be a practitioner of sustainment and logistics and then to step up into the political leadership realm is quite unique, and he took that career of his in the Army and the Marine Corps and turned it into something that we haven't seen in several years. So I'm in his debt to be able to walk into this and follow behind for the short time I am. he's operated at all echelons. And if you were to ask me how to describe him, in 2 words or less, I would use the term Renaissance man. You don't hear that much anymore, but it was a way that we describe a man of culture in the Renaissance period, who was very educated, very knowledgeable, and proficient on a wide range of topics and skills. And so for the present day man or woman, that's someone who's just profoundly knowledgeable and proficient on a multitude of areas, and he is. He knows supply chain. He was in his early days a provisioner. So it's really fun to be in these conversations when we're talking about how we bring sustainment into the organic enterprise and provision. When folks are talking to him, they don't quite know the depth of his knowledge, the technical depth. So it's pretty entertaining at times. He knows acquisition. He knows operations. And a little known fact, he's quite proficient in multiple vocational skills. He started out as a Marine Corps avionics mechanic, and I think that really set him up in other areas. So he's a mechanic, he's a carpenter, he's an electrician, he's a manager, he's a leader, he's a mentor, he's an advisor, and sometimes he's a little bit of a philosopher. He's probably one of the most well-rounded people I know, and I've enjoyed our conversations. So, I think his skill that he's acquired has enabled him to, lift a CJ5, put a lift kit on, and then figure out the next day how to repair his fuel injection on his pickup truck. So, skills that come in handy other than just logistics and management. He served as the Assistant Deputy Chief of Staff, G357, so deep understanding of operations and strategy, which certainly helps link together the operational and logistics requirements in a way that not everybody understands. He deployed, and again in our Afghanistan as the CSTICA command, addressing the 5 sustainment functions essential to teaching our Afghanis how to operate. He was also the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Acquisition Policy and Logistics, and this is where I learned much from him about sustainment reviews. The Army was doing sustainment reviews before Congress directed it. So he was really ahead of the curve there in understanding and ensuring that sustainment planning upfront in design of a system, in the acquisition, procurement, manufacture, and fielding of it was considered. And that has been absolutely priceless in refocusing ASDS on ensuring that is done across the services. So I met him when he was Director of Maintenance Policy, when he was on the Army staff back in about 2006. I was a colonel on the Joint Staff, J4, and I had the opportunity to sit in on the maintenance executive governance. As a colonel, it was SCS's, but this is where I met Chris Lohman, and I got to observe him firsthand and how he operates. So he was one of the few in that group who would actually speak up, and it was kind of interesting. The chair of that body would tend to invite those to come and have a conversation, but it was less about collaboration and cross learning, and more about, I'm going to convince you why my position's right. But Chris Lohman had this way about him, this calm, patient way that he would listen and he would dissect the argument, right, and the logic of it, and be able to go back and say why that may or may not work. So I sat back and just listened and watched and said, this is someone I want to emulate. What's little known about him, though, as this Renaissance man, is his passion for education and workforce development. So Mark, again, you not only have an advocate for resources, but you have someone that's truly passionate about developing our workforce. And I think you've seen that, and you've benefited from it in the years that he was leading, because the relationship with IDB for the Joint Staff, the the OSD staff and the services, and how we've tied education with the joint logistics boards and other governance to make sure that our logisticians have access to professional development at all echelons. So we were really excited about how he was able to, I'll say, re-energize that part of our portfolio. And I think you would agree with me that IDB has benefited from that. So what I want to say is he's also a yes man. And may think that's a bad thing. And I got to tell you, for me, it has been a bad thing. He's yes, because when you ask him to do something, he raises his hand and will do it. And oftentimes when it has to do with going out and mentoring and teaching and speaking about sustainment, he will say yes, hands down. Oftentimes he says yes, and he forgot that he said yes, and then he says yes to something that happens to be on the same date. So there were many times that we had to deconflict those speaking engagements, but it was all to benefit the community. So congratulations on getting someone who's going to sign up and do whatever you ask. I, like Tom Miller, am a benefit and a graduate of the Law Tech Executive Course. I was a little slow. I went twice, but for Ms. Smith's benefit, I'm going to be taking one of those slots. And when Chris Lohman is the mentor of that class, I will be going again. So Chris, congratulations to you. Congratulations to all of the Log Tech cohort for this year. I know that you're going to be a benefit to the entire log community through what you teach and how you mentor and how you advise those students. Congratulations, and back to you, Mark.
It was tremendous, Mr. Marani. Thank you, and really appreciate the continued partnership that we have with now your office. And frankly, we couldn't do what we do without it. Certainly not near as effective. And appreciate the introduction, and welcome, Honorable Lohman. Chris, we're so glad to have you on the team. You really round out just an incredibly talented group. And with that, let me transition here. A couple final comments, and I'll wrap it up. But I think all of you would agree. By the way, you introducers did a terrific job. You exceeded expectations. No surprise there. But I think everyone would agree that again, it's just a talented class of executive fellows for this year. And you know who's going to benefit from it is all those uniformed and civilian leaders that come through our programs. And oh, by the way, as everyone on here knows, IDB is a 501c3 nonprofit. We don't have a lot of money, so it's not like these fellows are doing it for the money. Again, I'm so glad they can't speak, but they're doing it for their love of education and development, and they're continuing to give back. And the folks that come through our programs this year are going to be the benefactors. So, ladies and gentlemen, before I close, just join me in a big round of applause for this year's class of IDB Executive Fellows. Tremendous. Okay, a couple final comments, and I'll let you get on your way. Thanks to my team for quickly transitioning to this virtual. It worked outstanding, and I'm so glad that everyone was able to join, and the team did a superb job doing it. The education of our leaders from defense and business has never been more important, and several of you commented about that, especially with all the threats that are laid out in the NDS challenging our great country. But IDB is proud to play a small role in that, and we couldn't be more honored and thankful to have our executive fellows play a role as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here this morning. Check out our idb.org. Okay, a shameful marketing plug. Check out our website and our programs for this year, especially that a lot of you who lead a lot of individuals to send to our programs, and really appreciate what you continue to do. Ladies and gentlemen, for our executive fellows, please hang around. We're going to take a quick virtual Hollywood Squares picture. And for everyone else, thanks for being here today. Thanks for cutting out part of your time for us. Have a great afternoon and a great 2025, and take care. Bye-bye now.